Welcome to the Retail Code. Today we have Milan and Gary with us, and I will quickly introduce myself. I am the Merchant Life, part of Retail Strategy Group, where I work with brands to help them get faster and closer to their customer, merchandising optimization, and materials management. Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll pass it on to Milan.
Yeah, Gary Newbury. I'm a senior exec on call, specialising in retail supply chains and the last mile. That covers manufacturing, wholesaling, third-party logistics, retailing, and the last mile. And my purpose in life is to inspire retail business leaders to think big, be bold, scale, adapt, and win one epic supply chain transformation at a time. Milan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for having me. First of all, so my name is Milan Novota. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pygmalios, which is a provider of in-store analytics and optimization tools for physical retail. Physical retail is something that really interests me. Otherwise, anything tech-related interests me as well. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
We're delighted to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll start off with our first question. Milan, would you say there are general trends within retailers indicating there are challenges with uptake of technology, apps, platforms, which can provide meaningful insights, competitive advantages, or an ROI?
So I would say, I wouldn't generalize it. There's no general trends, at least that I see. It differs from segment to segment. My view on this would be that if you go through the chain of retailers who are more closer to technology, any DTC retailer, digital native vertical brands, those probably have less challenges in adopting technology. But then maybe the second one in the row would be telco retail. We work quite a lot with telco retailers. These guys, they know technologies, they know their ways around. And afterwards, what I would call like legacy retail, maybe ending up with food retailers. And there we could definitely talk about some challenges on the road. If you forced me to pick up a couple challenges, then I would say maybe just in general the speed of change, the so-called acceleration, which even accelerated in the past years, is a challenge by itself. And this basically has several aspects to it. Of course, the changes in how consumers behave, that's quite accelerated with the COVID-19. And this brings with it some challenges of how retailers really should try to adopt technologies. This brings too many options on the table for retailers, so they have to pick up, they can't adopt everything, so they have to pick up a couple of things, which means they will have some failures on the way. So I would say speed of change is one of the challenges. And then maybe one more general trend I see is what I call the gap or disconnect between technology possibilities and management capabilities. So one of my favorite quotes in this sense is the value of the technology is never greater than what management is prepared to do with it. So this really applies since the times I've entered this segment, which is 6 years ago. So I'm fairly new. Just a disclaimer here, I'm not a retailer, but this is something I see since the inception. Like there is this really huge gap in between how what's possible in the technical sense and how retailers are able to what they are able to do with it. And this might be a problem of the technology itself, but also on the side of the organizations. But maybe there are two components to it. One is I would call it data or digital literacy, and technological debt is class of problems. So the retailers who really didn't innovate when they should have been innovating, and now they have to really stay relevant. And then organizational constraints. Of course, many of what I call legacy retailers have really organizational structures which really aren't up to date, I would say. Yeah, this will be my points here.
I think you're talking about the silos, that they haven't reformed into new silos to mirror.
Yeah, siloing is one of the problems, definitely.
You hit on an interesting point. I wrote an article, and it's on LinkedIn, about 5 things which define retail management competency. And one of them was the ability to understand and harness the power of technology. And I was ticking the boxes as you went down there. So as we look for those organizations that somehow embrace technology, they get over some of the things that you've described, such as, I guess underneath this is not only their inability to understand technology, but some of their fear about, what am I getting into? Am I going to be maybe capable enough to understand what questions to ask? Some adopt the technology very well and they get the results. They get either a great ROI, new insights, or even a competitive advantage by deploying it. And some end up with let's call it a missed opportunity or a failed project. It didn't happen. So I wonder if you have, in your reflection so far, and I don't think 6 years in retail is a new starter, a beginner. Actually, once you get in retail, it really is a very, very intense industry. You learn very quickly, what works and what doesn't work. What would you say are maybe the differentiating factor between those ones that become successful deploying technology? And it could be in supply chain, could be in merchandising, could be in stores, wherever it might be. And those ones in those same areas, maybe just it's another technology project that just didn't go anywhere.
I would say there are 3 clusters of contributing factors that are contributing to successful adoption of the technology. One of them is the retailer himself, but then of course it really matters what's the maturity of the technology, and then there is the global context. If I start on the technology side of things, of course, as a retailer, you should do your due diligence and see whether the vendor is able to deliver the technology. So doing this homework upfront really helps. And then the technology product itself, it just has to be, it has to have some features that really make it prone to be successful. So the product has to be user-centric. For example, we have many products that are developed by technology people. Technology people know technology, but don't know, retail, and they don't know the retail context and how really retail people think. It really has to have these retail persons in mind. Another problem of oftentimes of these retail technologies is that they are just not actionable. In case of, say, some analytical software, you have many analytical tools available, but are not actionable. So these retail folks just don't know what to do with the data. And technology can be even irritating if you have some system that monitors what's going on in the store and you got many false positives. Then the user just stop to trust it. So or maybe overwhelming amount of information that the product provides. That might be another problem. So that's the technology side of things. There's some global context which really helps to adopt technologies, pandemic being one of them. So we see not just many new technologies being around these days, but many of them being successfully adopted just because they have to do it. Like the retailers really need to do it, so they need to find ways. So this really helps. And also what I would call big moves. Imagine Amazon Fresh, which is a really huge bombshell put into the global environment, and this really forces the retailers to adapt. And then on the retail side of things, and both of these key factors that I mentioned before might be subsumed under this third factor, which is how the retailer is really set up, because of course you can do your due diligence as far as the technology goes. You can have your organization set up so that they can really adapt in a fast fashion. So I would say on the retailer side, it really boils down to the goal, from the top down, maybe the mindset. You have to really push back your natural affinity to loss aversion. If you want to innovate, you have to take risks. And by that measure, you need to accept failures. And in the corporate environments, at least those that I'm accustomed to, there's a really high ratio of averse managers. So the mindset is the first thing. Then, of course, the buy-in, everyone on the same page. And this is something, Gary, you mentioned, like, so you want to avoid silos. You want to have cross-functional teams available that are really on the same page, willing to march in the same direction, fighting the overconfidence, people thinking their judgments are better than they really are, which is just natural bias we have. Agreeing on the same goals, that's quite important as well. And having some goals in the first place, and the right framing of the technology, because it really matters whether you on the board level, you decide to put the technology in place, or you basically force your subordinates to go with it, or you sell it as a supporting tool, which can support their professional judgment. That's a really different kind of scenarios you can have there. And then your organization has to be just ready. What I like to see as a software engineer is this uptick of agile approaches in retail, which is really great. From my perspective, agile basically means a couple principles, such as cross-functional teams instead of silos. So you have all these people talking together, working on the same goal. You prefer rather working a solution rather than comprehensive documentation, which gives you some speed when it comes to really iterating on the problem, led by hypothesis rather than working on the really tough planning. And then after half a year, you figure out you made a mistake. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation, that's another principle that might be applied in retail very easily. And iterative and incremental adoption of technology. So rather than thinking big in the beginning, really trying to figure out what's the minimum viable implementation of the technology we can do here, so that we can then iterate on it, get a feedback, and do some incremental improvements on it. Agile approaches is that it really fits well with the technology companies, because technology companies are accustomed to work in an agile fashion. So I would say this is really the most important factor.
I think, Milan, you bring up some really, really great points. And, me being on both sides of it, where we're implementing a new way of working, but also 20 years within retail, getting a lot of technology companies coming to us, and some of the reasons why the technology, I don't want to use the word failed, but I will use the word challenging to get the people on board, was because the technology company did not understand the layers of retail and how these silos were working, and actually the people doing the work, how they had the ability to use the technology, to learn from it, and to understand that the technology was not taking away their role, but in fact enhancing the way that they were doing their work, being more customer centric. Have you seen in your world where the implementation just did not work because of retailers working in a traditional way, or working in silos, or the people doing the work were just not involved in the buy-in of the technology?
Sure, that's how I come up with these points I mentioned before. I had this conversation actually with a prospective client of ours, and I really liked what he said, because he said this problem is that the people that really understand the business don't know how to work with the technology or the analytics or the data in our case. And the people who can work with the data don't understand the business. So this is like a reality. This is what I call the gap. I'm just going into what we do, like in-store analytics. That's one of our things we do. So we basically put up sensors in the store, then we analyze customer behavior in the stores and come up with some reporting, which is great when we talk to prospective clients, or when we used to talk to them. They really liked what they see, because it sort of brought up this transparency into what was going on in the stores. But then, of course, the question was, so what to do with the data? We have seen, and we have seen it ourselves, and these were quite hard lessons for us. That this gap really causes many problems. Now, how you can really approach this in many ways. There's always at least two sides to this story. One is on the side of the technology. So what we did on our side is that we have really built into the technology the abilities to be closer to the users on the side of retailers. So we have added notifications, predictions. We have created these applications which are built on top of our data platform, so that we really serve the value to the customers in the most digestible way possible. On the side of the retailers, we really see how they start to change, although maybe slower than we would like to see them change. But we see that they have started to work on their objectives, so their expectations of the projects. They have started to define, and we are helping them proactively to define the goals, define the expectations, define the success criteria. So this is the way we see out of this. And another problem maybe worth mentioning, we see quite often on the side of retailers, is lack of ownership. When we talk to retailers and we try to make them use our technology, we used to talk to IT people. And it's quite easy to get IT people like our software, because it's a gadget and they like gadgets. So this is great, able to sell them and so on. But then, of course, again, what now? So you have the users of the software are different than the guys who really like to in the first place. So we really try to, with our clients, but this applies, I guess, to any sort of, retail technology adoption scenario. We really try to come up with the ways of how to establish real ownership in the connection with the clear success criteria.
I think it's very important for technology companies to work with the right part of retail. So another thing that I've seen is that insights driven from data are not used across all of the retail functional teams, where it's only used by marketing, and the reporting is giving you insights that actually the merchant can't use. So have you seen that you've had to adjust the reporting that you were just talking about to speak to insights for different parts of the organization?
Sure, you can look at Google Analytics for the real world. Now, Google Analytics is quite a general purpose analytical, engine. And so we try to really map the whole customer journey, the whole physical customer journey that the customer takes in the stores, from entering the store, so when she passes by the zones in the store, ending up in the queues and so on. And each function of the retail is interested into different parts of the store. So marketers might be interested into the overall traffic, and the merchandisers might be interested into how the product zones are basically performing. Operation guys might be interested into how checkout areas are doing, and so on. So we try to circumvent the need for any kind of interpretation of the data by creating these applications which are built on top of the data, but they actually do something in the store.
Yeah, I think you've described an informed development path rather than guys sitting in the back room trying to work it all out. And the thing about retail is we're all shoppers in some shape or form. So we kind of know what that is, but maybe we don't. When it comes to a specific retailer and a specific problem they're trying to solve. You've given us so many clues as to what can go right and what can go wrong, and why people don't onboard technology, and what and the benefits when they do it and do it successfully, and how maybe tech needs to, instead of thinking about the software and the esoteric nature of all the code, but actually say, well, do you know what? We can work out, working with retailers, what they need, and then we can develop that, because we've got those development skills to actually help that retailer be much better in the marketplace and in what they're trying to achieve. So we're coming to the end of the session, and normally I say on that bombshell, but you're going to like a minefield of stuff. So I just like to thank you for all the contributions today. It's been really good quality, lots of directions and lots of watch outs for anybody listening in, Milan. I really appreciate that. And Lisa, do you want to just chip in to finish us off?
Yes, thanks for joining us today, Milan. I think you definitely hit a lot of nails on the head there, where even you as a technology company were able to be agile and react to the pandemic constraints, which I think is super valuable. So I like the fact that you're also, I hate the word pivoting, but but also pivoting just like retailers.
We did.
So
like everyone had to, everyone had to. But it's in our nature, so we are a startup, so it was easy, although quite tough a year, but we did it. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Cool. Thanks very
much. Of course. Thanks everyone for joining in.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hit the like button and leave your comments. Connect with us on LinkedIn to get the heads up on future episodes of The Retail Code.